Breitling's best known marketing catchphrase is probably instruments for professionals. Their most iconic watch is the Navitimer made for aircraft pilots and navigators. Shortly behind that, they've got the Cosmonaut they made for an astronaut, the Chronomats that they made for engineers, etc. But Breitling have never seen themselves as constrained to that. They have branched out and they've made dive watches. But even more than that, they've branched out and made stuff which is just plain old everyday, either gorgeous or fun. If for gorgeous, look at things like those 1940s calendar moon phase chronographs like the 799. For fun, we go to the 1960s and we start looking at the top time and sprint chronographs. Simple, fun, easy to wear, less expensive, aimed at a younger, more youthful audience during a time of great change in the mid to late 60s. So that raises an interesting question during another time of change in 2022. How much fun is a 1968 Breitling Sprint today in 2022? Let's have a look. As soon as you look at this watch, you can see that Breitling is shooting for, and I think has achieved, a sense of adventure in the design. This really comes through when you look at the forms chosen. Soft oval curves mixed with sharp edges and ends, capturing a kind of late 1960s disruptive feel. The spirit of the 60s also comes through in the hands, sharp and geometric with striking orange colours. No mid-century modern shrinking violets here. The intent of this design is clear. This is a watch that wants to stand out. It wants to be seen during a time when everyone wanted to be seen and you had to work pretty hard to stand out. The Breitling Sprint is a product of a different time and it wears that time on its sleeve for us to wear. But in 2022, when fashion is again embracing the excitement, the hope of the late 60s and early 70s, I think this is today a very contemporary look. Let's be frank though, the spec and the build of this watch are anything but contemporary. Certainly not helped by 56 years of wear and tear, but the case finishing on this watch is best described as crude. And lume, where there is any, is barely present. Other details, though, hold up remarkably well. The hands and the dial furniture, again allowing for more than 50 years of use, actually come across as superior to many modern watches where we use stamping or 3D printing, giving a blunted, more muted effect compared to the really sharp applied indices we get here. As for specs, well, it's made of steel, so I assume that's pretty good. But the crystal is plastic, and I would count the water resistance as none. So that's probably not great. The movement, though, is a Valjoux 7734 manual wind cam-operated chronograph. That's actually good news. The 7734, like a lot of those Valjoux movements, come from the Venus 178, eventually becoming the Valjoux 7750. The design is rock solid, well understood by pretty much any watchmaker in the world, and parts are actually pretty easy to come by. This is a vintage chronograph that isn't going to leave you fretting. In terms of wearability, it is very much in time with the current zeitgeist for smaller watches. 38mm across, just 44 lug to lug, and a petite 12.2mm thick. This is a watch that kind of gives a lie to the idea that Breitling only make big, bold, flashy watches. Combine with that relatively diminutive sizing, a little bit of shaping to the case back, and this watch is super wearable. In fact, it's incredibly comfortable to wear for pretty much anyone all day, every day. These watches aren't hard to find. On any given day, there'll be a bunch of old Sprints on Chrono 24. The challenge is going to be in getting one at the condition you want and the price you want. Speaking of price, that's going to be between $2,000 and $3,000 US, very dependent upon condition. I like to finish these all killer, no filler reviews with 3 pros and 3 cons. I'll start with the pro. This is a really good looking watch, more fun than a barrel of monkeys, and that 1960s, 70s feel right in tune with the current 2020 zeitgeist. Con 1, being a watch of the late 1960s, case finishing and just those fine details are actually pretty crude by today's standard. Pro 2, fitted with a Valjoux 7734, this watch is a relatively worry-free entree into the world of vintage watches, and especially vintage chronographs. Con 2, whilst not the worst, that 7734 is still a vintage chrono and still a vintage case. It is still got 1968 chronograph levels of shock protection, anti-magnetism and water resistance. You will need to be aware of how and when you wear this watch. Pro 3, however, given that we've already said some care might be required, if you're in, say, an office environment where you don't really have to worry about getting beaten up and or getting dunked underwater, then this watch, this size, this shaping, and this look, you could wear this every day. This could be a super wearable office watch day in, day out. But con 3, condition and availability. You can't just walk into any LAD and pick one of these up. They are available on places like Chrono 24, but trusting the photo, trusting the seller, making sure it's coming in a condition you want, that's always going to be a challenge with any vintage watch, possibly worse with a vintage chronograph. You're going to have to be really careful how you pick this one up. So that's my all-killer, no-filler review of the Breitling Sprint from 1968. I love this watch, but I can also see its weaknesses and its downsides, and it's definitely not a watch for everyone. Love to hear your thoughts. Stick them in the comments below. Welcome to my channel if this is your first time here. Welcome back if you've been here before. Either way, make sure you like this video and subscribe. I will see you later. Bye.